Hello everyone. Today we're going to speak about how the business model canvas intersects with the lean startup and how startups can develop quite fast in such a complicated time frame with a sense of agility to be able to test their hypothesis and eventually achieve success with their business idea. So firstly, we should start by defining what the startup thinks first, and I believe that the startup thinks first of the problem, maybe the solution, but being whatever, both, they should consider testing it some way. And here is when the business model canvas comes into play. So to test it, they can have different hypotheses about different sections of their business idea, and that can be sketched through the business model canvas. They have key partners, key activities, key resources, value propositions, customer relations, customer segments, channels, cost structures, and revenue streams. And through all these sectors, if they need to have a great business idea, they should be able to validate through a rigorous process, not that long, agile but rigorous, to make sure that it is essentially validated that their startup would work in real life. And so, for example, let's take one, key partners. If a startup needs key partners to be allied, and for example, they want to provide a banking service and they need to be partnered with the banks, but the banks for some reason don't want that service to be provided and they will not change their mind by any means, they need to find a turnaround. So in that sense, going wrong changes all of the other aspects in the business model canvas. They would need to rethink the idea and certain parts of it that wouldn't work if they change the key partners. For example, if you change the key partner of the banks, then the key activities can change as well. Like, for example, you can directly connect your interface with the banks, but now maybe you can't. So you need to find a turnaround where key partners are not the banks, but maybe, I don't know, the government, and find a turnaround with the government or in some other key partners. And this is completely dynamic, so it doesn't just affect key partners. For example, let's take the same key partner example and go into the key resources. So if you were expecting that the resources that were needed were gonna be provided by the banks, then in that case you should change it and maybe find like VC fund, maybe, I don't know, find some crowdfunding or some other option. So then it kind of changes, it starts changing. Then also we can take the same for like customer relationships. Then if we thought banks as partners, customers would have quite a lot of trust because banks are backing us up. But what if not? Then in that case, customer relationships also changes. You need to probably do a better and bigger marketing strategy, and where are you going to get the funding for that? Then that comes back as well to the key partners. Also in the channels, for example, so we see how the key partner chasing the banks. And then if a channel was going to be the bank's marketing system, so you were going to be promoted through their reputation, then there is like no way in like getting this promotion anymore. So you need to find another way. And also the segments. If you thought that people that were pro banks, that like these processes, were actually going to go there, then it's a segment that is not exactly included, because in this case, for example, you partner with banks and the segment would be bank clients, but not anymore. You need to find another segment that relates more to who actually is going to get your product, because as you're not going to be partnered with the banks, then the segment is not going to be directly their same clientele. Then also cost structure. Maybe banks had systems that you could use if you partnered with them, and maybe in the case where you don't partner, you would need to pay to make those systems from scratch, or create an alternative of that system, or make like a breakthrough with some other type of idea. And in that case, it also changes. And then revenue streams. Maybe like people were actually going to pay you zero and you were going to get just commissions from the banks for each deal. But now that you're not allied with banks, you need to charge people, or you need to charge someone else because you need to be profitable. So in this case, just by changing one single thing, you can see that all of the other aspects change. And that's why the lean startup can get into this. Because if we change one thing and we adopt lean startup mentality, we get this flow of testing and repurposing things. And so we can test and we can repurpose tons of times, and through this we can get really great and different ideas through being super agile and changing our way of doing things into getting a startup that might actually work. So for example, you get these feedback loops. You start with an idea, then you pass to testing, then you get the feedback, you analyze the feedback and see how that feedback actually affects the business model canvas. So you create a new business model canvas, you compare it with the previous one, and you see, oh well, this changes, and well, if this changes, this other thing changes as well. So that will lead you to create another business model canvas, and will lead you with that other business model canvas define a new idea. So essentially, you'll start to create new business model canvas about new ideas, and until the feedback loop breaks and there's one idea that definitely goes, and that is the one that will be the supposedly successful one. Doesn't guarantee success, of course, but you can always, at a certain point further, can return to the feedback loop and get into that loop and test and test. And I guess this is very important in this day and age, as well, recently there was this Silicon Valley Bank collapse, and definitely affected and is affecting startups all over the world. And so if you want to be successful these days, you need to fight it really hard and find something that is essential for the market, and that is not just bluffing and might get lucky and funded by some random bank. Not like, for example, 1 or 2 years ago, crypto startups were getting funding for basically saying that they were a crypto startup. So in this case, it's not anymore like that. In this case, you need to really prove the value. You need to get a great executable idea that will feel that it has no other option of getting into feedback loops, because all the feedback points that the idea is correct. And in that sense, just in that case, you might say that you got a really great startup idea. And if you manage to pull it out in this day and age, then you can pull it out probably in some other day and age where it was probably easier to get funding. And I'm not saying it's the hardest time in history to get funding, like we're not exactly in the end of a 2008 recession, but who knows what's coming next with the whole financial sector and the US economy constantly slowly collapsing. So maybe, just maybe, applying the Lean Startups ideas now, it's the best method of getting your startup to run properly. And so that's all for today. Thank you for watching.